In this particular presentation, what I'm going to focus on is social media tools, and this particular presentation is geared towards instructors that tend to teach job seekers. You will also find that the information is invaluable to the job seekers themselves, so if you're an individual who wants to understand how to use social media for the job search, this presentation can provide information that can be useful to you. So my name is Letitia Alford, and I'm going to begin the process of talking about why social media is important as it relates to the job seeker. One of the things that I tend to focus on in my particular classroom is helping adult learners try to figure out how they can make themselves more visible to employers and how they can become valuable and promote themselves as a worker who has the necessary knowledge, skills, and abilities that is needed by potential employers. This particular presentation will focus on these 5 areas. For example, we're going to talk about 5 different stages, and we're going to begin with the first part of the process, which talks about what it is that you can do as an instructor so that the person who is seeking an opportunity in the workplace has the option of getting to know themselves. The individual also needs to be able to determine their brand. They need to understand how to be able to network using the various social networking tools. It is essential that the job seeker know how to provide value to the potential employer. And then the last part of that is to make sure that once they understand how to provide value, that they know how to become visible. With that being said, one of the first things that we're going to start out focusing on deals with knowing yourself professionally. So you can't just jump into social media expecting to go out and create a web page. It doesn't work like that. It's essential that you understand as a job seeker who you are professionally. So one of the things that I tend to do or start off with as an instructor is to make sure that the individual is pretty clear on the types of occupation or industry that they want to participate in. One of the ways that I begin that process is by asking that person to begin to do what we call a self-inventory. This is one of the least inexpensive methods the job seeker can use in order to figure out what it is that they want to do in the marketplace today. With being able to do a self-inventory, it is essential for the job seeker to know who they are. So some of the ways that they can try and figure that information out is for them to, one, begin to do an analysis on what it is that they're passionate about. They may begin to explore what types of gifts have they exhibited in their professional life. If they can't identify anything, then I would ask them to think about their personal life and figure out what is it that people have said that you're really good at. Oftentimes, if a person comes back and they say, you know, I am not really clear, I'm not sure on what it is that I'm good at. I don't know in my own mindset what it is that I'm capable of doing right now. For that person, as an instructor, I clearly understand that it is an opportunity for them to be able to assess who they are. And so online, there is a website, and it is called cfnc.org. When you go to that website, I think it is essential for you to let the job seeker know that for free, they can come out here and they can create an account. So in this area, you can see where it says create my CFNC account. And at no charge, they can go in and register. Upon completion of registering for an account, the individual would then look to the top of this menu bar, and at that point they would click on Plan for Career is what they would select next. And then there's going to be a third area that's called Learn About Yourself. After they click on Learn About Yourself, or in that instance it'll be Learn About Yourself, they will be exposed to 9 different assessments. If you look at this particular slide, you'll notice that I have 2 different assessments showing. Of the 9 different assessments, typically, what I recommend that the individual starts with is one of 2 areas. One, to determine what they're professionally interested in, it is helpful for them to identify varieties of careers up to narrowing their choices to about 3, and finally selecting only one. I would recommend that they take the interest profiler. A second assessment that I would recommend that they take is going to be called do what you are. And that's going to be on the right side of their screen, which is going to be under the area for Career Cluster Survey. And that's going to be down on the bottom right. So they'll take two surveys. The first one's going to be on the left, which is the interest profiler. That one's going to have about 180 questions. And then they'll take the second assessment, which is going to be the Do What You Are assessment. So in this area, I start off first with the interest profiler. This particular assessment is geared towards the individual, not focusing on their knowledge, skills, and ability. The purpose of this assessment is so the individual can think about what it is that they might like to do. So they'll be presented with a task. For example, the task might say something like, would you like to build kitchen cabinets? The individual will choose like if it's a task that they would want to do. If they're not sure, they will choose unsure, selecting the letter U or unsure. And then the third choice clearly says, if you know that you would dislike doing either one of those, select dislike. Having said that, again, keep in mind that the purpose of this assessment is not to answer based on what they know, is not to answer based on their experience, is clearly there to ask them, would you be interested in this? So it's essential that that is emphasized to the potential job seeker so that they can try and identify what they may be passionate about or what they may have a potential professional interest in. Once that particular assessment is done for the Do What You Are, it's going to come back and it's going to give a list of recommendations in terms of career paths that the individual can explore. And if the person finds that they are still having difficulty, a second assessment that I would really recommend is the Do What You Are assessment. For this assessment, you will have to go in and direct the job seeker to register again, because even though they're already in the College Foundational North Carolina database, this is a separate database which takes them off-site. The person would need to register again on the left. And typically what I do is I ask the individual to make sure that they register using the same username and password as they did when they initially registered on the cfnc.org website. This will facilitate the process to make it easier for them to remember their username and password. Having said that, I like the Do What You Are assessment because when it comes to social media, it has multiple applications. And one of the things that I typically find is that it can help the user find out or identify using keywords what it is that proves to be a strength for that person. So they don't have to start over from scratch, trying to scratch their heads and think about what is it that is really good about me that may be of interest to potential employers. Instead, it can give them some suggestions to kind of get that ball rolling so that the person has the opportunity to use the feedback from the assessment in order to get them started with the social media site. Furthermore, another part that's really essential to the Do What You Are assessment is at the end it'll come back and give a list of career suggestions. It's nice if the individual has taken both the Do What You Are assessment in addition to the Do What You Are survey. Let me repeat that again. So it's essential that the person make sure that they have gone in and completed the interest profiler and the Do What You Are assessment, because if they've done both, they can look at the career suggestions from each assessment to try and determine which career path might they be interested in, so they can then determine what occupation they want or what industry they want to explore. So having said that, that's why I would like to start this particular phase out by saying it's essential for the individual to clearly understand and identify what it is that they want to be professionally known for in terms of an occupation as well as the industry that they are interested in exploring. And that has to be done before you can even begin to create a social media account that will be used in terms of making yourself visible to an employer. With that being said, we've already talked about the objectives that we're going to cover, and we've completed phase one. So phase one, we've identified that it's essential for the individual to know who they are professionally. And once they've determined that, at this point, we're going to say the theme of this entire presentation is going to focus on brand, value, and visibility. And so at this point, we've gone in and we've defined what it is that we want to be professionally known for. As an instructor, I tend to say to job seekers, it is essential at this point for them to be able to determine their brand. And the way that I define their brand in this area, and this is not just totally, this may be put in my words, but the idea really stems from a book by Kyle Lacey that talks about personal branding. And so what I would recommend here is that the person define brand as how you want potential employers to think and feel about you professionally. So again, when we talk about brand in this section, we're saying, how do you want potential employers to think and feel about you professionally? So let me go into a little bit about what we mean by that. Part of what goes into a brand is for us to identify the words that we want to pop into an individual employer's mind as it relates to how we want them to think about us when they hear our names. So if someone were to say, Letitia Alford, I would want them to have thoughts. I would want them to have ideas that say, I am a hands-on instructor. I would want them to think that I am a problem solver. Furthermore, it's not enough for that individual employer to think one thing about me. I want them to be able to act on what they feel, which means that I need to emotionally compel that particular employer. And I can't do that unless I can get them to emotionally connect with what it is that I want them to think. So in this instance, on the other side, or in addition to thinking, I want them to feel something specific. So as a hands-on instructor who is a problem solver, I tend to say, I want employers to believe and I want them to think and feel a certain way. In this instance, I want them to feel as if I empower students, and I want them to feel as if they can trust what I'm saying. So let's do a recap. If I say that I want them to think a certain way about me, such as I want them to think I'm a hands-on instructor and that I'm a problem solver, and then on the right side, I want them to feel as if I am empowering them or their students, or as if I want them to feel that they can trust what I'm saying, then the question becomes, as an instructor who is trying to create this professional brand, what is it that I can say to make that potential employer think and feel that way? What is it that I can do to make that potential employer think and feel that way about me? What is it that I can share in order to make that employer think and feel that way about me? So what is it that I can say, do, or share to make that particular employer think that I am a hands-on instructor who is a problem solver? And what is it that I can say, do, and share to make them feel as if they can trust what I'm saying, as if they are empowered by what I'm telling them? And so I began to craft that type of image, that brand, which causes them to think and feel that way, even if they've never even met me. So a part of your brand, or really the way that we're defining brand, is giving us the opportunity to say that whenever we have mapped out or created a blueprint for the way that we want people to see us, we should not be behaving in a manner that is the exact opposite of what we say we want to be professionally known for. We should not be behaving or acting out in a manner that is the exact opposite of the image that we have crafted for ourselves, the brand that we have put out there. Because then that means that we're behaving badly, so badly that it doesn't even reflect the brand that we said we want potential employers to think that we have. So you must always make sure that you behave, you say things, as well as making sure that you share information that causes you to be seen in the manner in which you desire professionally. And when you realize that you're about to do something that's the exact opposite of your brand, that you stop before you put information online, before you even say something that is the exact opposite of your brand, that you not even act in a manner that is the exact opposite of how you want to be professionally known. So we need to create and focus on what we call a positive branding image so that employers who have never met us, and for those that do see us, or for anyone that tends to hear our name, at this point I would say it's essential that we let the job seeker know that we need to behave in a manner that creates a positive brand so that employers think and feel the way that we want them to about the professional services or products that we are there to provide. Now we're going to move on to the third phase. Once we've mapped out what it is that we want to be professionally known for, and once we've gone in and determined our brand, it is essential that we understand the networking tools that are available to us. And so at this point, I tend to go into typically what I call the big 8, but for purposes of this presentation, I focus on the big 7. So if we were looking at the types of social media that are highly publicized and very well trafficked today, the first one we would start off for a job seeker with is called LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn is one of those professional networks that we can use as a social media tool in order to make ourselves visible in the professional network. In a moment, we're going to talk about blogging. We'll speak about Twitter. I also want to talk about Facebook business page, which has also been referred to as Facebook fan page. We'll talk about Google+, Pinterest, and YouTube. Starting out, the number one site, as I've said before, that many of the job seekers need to have a page for is definitely LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is considered a professional networking site that has features available that allow you as a job seeker to build a network, and it can allow the job seeker to have the opportunity to make their brand visible to potential employers. Having said that, oftentimes, many employers tend to pre-screen an individual even before an interview, even before extending an interview offer. That employer oftentimes goes online or has one of their employees go online to screen the employee or the potential job candidate so that they have the opportunity to get a bigger understanding of whether or not that person is, number one, qualified for the position, and then number two, to also make sure that they might be a good cultural fit. So having said that, LinkedIn is one of those sites that you may want to consider. Furthermore, another way or reason that I use to actually explain to job seekers that they need to consider LinkedIn for actually deals with networking. This is one of the sites where the job seeker can go in and try to determine what some of the needs of the potential employer are is by going out to take a look at the LinkedIn company page. A second thing they can do as a job seeker is to try and reach out to individuals on the LinkedIn site and try to get an in with that company, meaning that they look for someone in the organization with whom they can connect to try to get additional information or insight about job openings, potential vacancies. And these are some of the easier ways to begin to use the LinkedIn site. Oftentimes, job seekers tend to think it's just a place to create a profile and just sit back and wait for potential employers to reach out to them. But I would highly encourage the individual to have an active, ongoing relationship with updating their LinkedIn profile, and to also put out visual evidence to show I can do what I said I could by using different types of tools, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. In this instance, I've already gone out and I've explained that I think it's essential for us to be cognizant of the types of relationships that can be built on the LinkedIn platform. And here again, I just want to reiterate that it is essential for the job seeker to reach out and try to find people in the organization that they want to target, so that they can try and find people that can give them insight about potential job openings, maybe about key contacts that they may want to reach out to. There are a host of other approaches an individual can take by leveraging some of the free features on the LinkedIn site if the person has a limited budget. Blogging is another social networking tool that I highly recommend. In fact, I recommend that a potential job seeker consider creating a blog. And so when we typically think of blog, we're basically talking about a web log. It's an electronic, chronological type of site that allows the individual to focus on their occupation or their industry. The nice thing is they can create articles or postings centered around a particular type of trend that's going on in their industry. They can use it to showcase and demonstrate their knowledge and skills. And one of the things that I like to point out is that oftentimes with many of these social media sites, you can actually do some of the same things on LinkedIn that you can actually do on your blog. Or if you create content on your blog, you can take those blog posts and share the link to that specific type of publication or posting and share it back on LinkedIn so that you can have cross promotion of different types of content. And so that's something else to think about as it relates to blogging. In this instance, what I've shown here is that there are a host of different blogging tools available. You know, some of those that tend to come to mind, and again, the lines are kind of blurred. You know, you have Blogger, which is a different type of platform because it's owned by Google. So Blogger is free and it gives the potential job seeker the opportunity to create content focused around industry trends. It could be that they talk about different topics that center around their occupation as well as centering around the industry as a whole, so that they can prove that, hey, I really know this particular space. And so with that, they don't know what types of opportunities this particular blog can lend itself to. Another type of blog is Tumblr, and I don't typically recommend Tumblr because it is the type of platform that to me doesn't lend itself professionally to the job seeker, at least not in this point in time. And don't get me wrong, because I do believe that we can break away from some of the stereotypes and say, even though a space isn't used for a particular purpose, such as a career purpose, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider it. But as it relates to Tumblr, I haven't seen a lot of professional content in that space. And for me, I don't see where you could get a lot of return on the amount of time that you may invest on this particular site professionally. So I'm just pointing out, you know, even though I see that particular page, I don't recommend Tumblr, but I'm just pointing out what it is. But one of the most popular types of blogging platforms is WordPress. And WordPress comes in two different kinds. First of all, you can do a free WordPress site. And so with that particular content, you can go online and create a blog centered around the subject that you want as it relates to your particular type of career. Or you can choose to host WordPress on your own site so that you can share your WordPress site with whomever it is that you desire. One of the things that's really nice about a blog is maybe you have different ideas and you want to contribute your own voice in a particular industry or occupation, and you want to share those thoughts with the world, and you want that to be known to potential employers. Again, a blog can be very helpful for that, and it can help to make those ideas visible, and if it is publicly shared, that information becomes searchable. So that's one of the good things about having a blog. Another site that should be considered is Twitter. Twitter is one of those sites that allows the individual to share, again, career information. It could be that you're wanting to share tips on how to do something. It could be that you're solving a problem in order for you to showcase your knowledge and skills. What's nice is that each tweet can actually share information to showcase your knowledge and skills. For example, you could share a video that has a link going back just to show people how to solve a particular problem in your field. Furthermore, Twitter will give you the opportunity to post that information so that people can publicly search for it, provided your profile is public. The Twitter site goes back to being created in 2006 by Jack Dorsey. And one of the things that I like to point out that I think many people should be aware of is that you have to be very careful about what you do post in the public area of Twitter, because it's one of the sites that doesn't require an individual to have an account in order to search this particular database. And oftentimes, when a person is going in and publicly posting data, the information can be searched, and more specifically by keywords. So when we talk about keywords, maybe you're thinking about a particular skill, maybe there is an acronym that's used in your field. People can search the Twitter database and come across the content that you post for your occupation, for your industry, just based on whatever it is that you're putting in that area of your tweet. So again, your tweet is consisting of no more than 120 characters, than 140 characters. So your tweet will have no more than 140 characters for you to be able to share valuable content that can help people as it relates to your field or to help showcase your knowledge, skills, and ability. And this is just pointing out again, reiterating the fact that on the Twitter site, you get 140 characters maximum. So that means that you have to be very concise about what you're saying, what you're thinking about, or whatever it is that you want to share has to be straight to the point, short and sweet. This is showing that when it comes to the Twitter platform, you're wanting to make sure that you're putting information out there that is capable of helping a particular employer. In this instance, if you're thinking of becoming visible or getting on a potential employer's radar, maybe you want to talk about some of the problems that they may be facing. And so you may want to put out a one-liner, which includes a link, a one-liner that basically says something like, you want to figure out how to solve this problem in your industry? Put in a keyword, ask the question, and then allow a link to be added so that the individual can click on the link, and maybe it takes them to an article you created, or maybe it takes them to a curated article, meaning an article that someone else created, but yet you're actually giving that person credit for their information, but you're adding your own voice to it. Another tool that you're able to use in order to make yourself visible using social media tools includes Facebook business pages, also known as Facebook fan page. These pages are free, and one of the things that I like to point out is that you have the opportunity at no charge to create a web page that can allow you to build relationships with individuals. And in order to make yourself visible, in order to make your brand visible, maybe you would have a Facebook page with your first name, last name. Maybe you even include part of the skill. So if my name was Letitia Alford, if I specialized in Excel pivot tables, I might say Letitia Alford Excel pivot tables. And so if that URL address was available, then I would try to get that on Facebook. And again, let me pause to say something. When I'm talking about a URL address, all I mean is a web address. So for example, the way that this would look is something like this. It could be that the URL web address is facebook.com/Letitia Alford Excel pivot tables. And the whole site would be dedicated to me just focusing on Excel pivot tables, using information that I could to make people perceive me in the manner that I desired based on the brand that I've outlined for myself, so that I share information that causes me to act in a manner that's consistent with how I want potential employers to think and feel about me. So in this particular case, if I felt that I wanted individuals to believe that I was hands-on, then I might create little tutorials that people could click on so that they would have the opportunity to test out different scenarios or see how-to information that demonstrates that I have a particular skill set, but yet it would help them solve a specific type of problem. And of course, the Facebook page would allow me to do that. And again, one thing that's really nice about the Facebook pages is that you can create an unlimited number of Facebook pages, and they are at no charge. In this instance, all I'm pointing out here is that another name for Facebook business pages are Facebook fan pages. Now, one of the things that I commonly get a question about is how do I register for a Facebook page? And so in this area of the presentation, I'm saying that you can create several types of Facebook business pages. More specifically, if you're a job seeker though, I want you to focus on the top row, the very end, on the one that's for brand or product. And so when you click create a page, you're going to make sure that you choose create a brand or product. And then typically you would include your first name, last name, and I would also say try to add the skill for which you want to be known for, or the occupation or the industry, so that when people look at the web address of your Facebook page, they instantly realize what it is that your brand is going to focus on professionally. I've already pointed out already that on the Facebook business page, it's essential that you focus on building relationships to broaden your network so that people get the opportunity to understand who you are, what it is that you value, and how you're able to help them. Google Plus is another one of those sites, but yet we all realize that hopefully it's owned by Google. So again, let me say that one more time. Google Plus is a site that's owned by Google, which I think many of us understand. But furthermore, to me, when I think about the Google Plus pages, to me, they're very much like the Facebook business pages. And yet, you're limited to only creating 50 Google Plus business pages. So having said that, Google Plus can allow you to build relationships. The one reason that I typically include it in the presentation is because it is owned by Google, who can then give you quite a bit of visibility if you're including keywords about your occupation, your industry, your knowledge, your skills, your abilities, so that again you can focus on topics in your area so that you can become known for a particular subject matter. This is considered to me to be a social networking site. I can't really think of any site that really wants to be known as social media. But having said all of that, Google Plus is one of those sites that job seekers can use to share content in a manner very similar to what they would do on Twitter, LinkedIn, and then be able to share and cross-promote the different content that they have created or the different content that they believe is relevant to their field. So in this area, again, I would say, like Facebook business pages, that the individual would focus on trying to build relationships and trying to create an online profile so that if an employer were typing in your name along with the keyword that represents what you want to be professionally known for, that you would come up, you would be visible, and they would have the opportunity to determine whether or not you're qualified and whether or not you'd be a good fit for their organization. Pinterest. Pinterest is one of those sites that didn't get started on the West Coast. It didn't get started on the East Coast. It got started right here in the middle of the United States. Another thing about Pinterest is that it took off basically because of word of mouth. And another thing that's interesting about it was that women who were in their 40s, who were in the arts and crafts circle, were really responsible for getting it started. One of the analogies often used to talk about Pinterest refers to the fact that it's very much like they tend to compare it to a visual type of bookmarking system. So for those of us back in the day who were very familiar with Microsoft Internet Explorer, we were accustomed to creating what we call favorites. And so with favorites, we would go to a web page, and if we wanted to return to it because we liked it, we would add it to a folder, or we would create a link so that later on we could go back, click the link, and return to that page. Pinterest operates in the same manner. However, what's really different about it is that it will actually visually create a link to a video, or it'll visually create a link to an article or any page that typically has an image. And so with that being said, Pinterest is one of those sites that can make a potential job seeker visible. So for example, if a job seeker creates a video that focuses on, let's say the person is a TV repair person, and they create a video on how to repair a specific model of a television, one of the things that they could do is they could create a Pinterest website. So maybe it's pinterest.com/TV repair, and then maybe it's Ed Brown. So it could be Ed Brown TV Repair. And when people go to their site, they may see miniature tutorials where Ed Brown could, and I can't imagine he would do this, but Ed Brown could go out and show how he would fix a particular model of television, and yet it's captured via video. And so when people look at his site, then they may see one of several videos, but specifically when they click on the first video, it really talks about a particular model of a TV. It demonstrates that Ed Brown is capable of going in, showing how he fixes it, and then the person can actually go in and add Pinterest to their particular site for Ed Brown. And I know that this would actually give a little more information than one may desire. But more specifically, Pinterest would give them the opportunity to create what we call a pin. And that pin is going to create a link on that person's board who found Ed Brown, so that if they wanted to return to Ed Brown's site for that specific video of TV repair, they could click it and it would take them back to that video. So it's like creating a favorite in Microsoft Internet Explorer, except it's a visual bookmark so that when the person sees the image, they're inspired to click on Ed Brown's link as it relates to that particular video. In this case, what I've done here is I've shown one of the Pinterest sites that I have, and I do have several. And what I've done here is I've shown that I have create a board. Your boards can be secret or they can be visible. If your goal is to get a job, you want your boards to be visible. In this first one, what I've done here is I've shown that this board actually depicts classes that I would give at Wake Technical Community College at a given point in time. So if people really wanted to follow the schedule that is available for me, then they could click on this board and they would be able to find that particular schedule that I may post on that site. So they can follow that board. Furthermore, I have other boards that I've designed that are topic specific, and each person, depending on what they want to be known for in terms of their occupation or their industry, can create boards that relate to that specific topic. In case you were wondering though, this next board focuses on LinkedIn. I like to name mine in a similar manner, so I tend to say something like LinkedIn trends and best practices. And this other board focuses on color as it relates to social media and the importance of color and the meaning of colors. And this again is named Color, Trends, and Best Practices. There have been job seekers who need resources. And so what I've done is, in this board, the resources focus more specifically on online courses that are available at no charge to individuals wishing to further their education. And if I look at this area, what this is showing is their books and trends. So there are book trends and best practices, certain books that I read that I think will be really invaluable for job seekers. So I've created a board for that. And the list just goes on and on and on. So again, depending on the person's desire in terms of what they want to be professionally known for, and depending on the brand that they've mapped out for themselves, they can use Pinterest to make themselves visible. The information that you put out there, as long as that board is public, keywords need to be included. And when I say keywords, a keyword can represent a skill, a job title, an occupation. It could represent an industry. It could represent education, certain credentials, certain licensing, and we could go on and on and on. But you want to use keywords that you believe employers would look for so that they're likely to find you. And do keep in mind that employers can actually say, you know, show me the people who focus on TV repair for Raleigh, North Carolina. And those boards would surface, or those particular social media sites, or any content that has the right keywords that are like what that individual is searching for would come up in the search results. How high you would show up in the results really depends on how active you are on many of these sites. And that's just one of the criteria, not just the only criteria. So your activeness can actually help increase your ranking, but that's not the only criteria. So do keep that in mind. YouTube's one of my favorite sites, and that's because I love to create video. I feel like I can do that a lot faster than any of the other types of social media content. Depending on who you are and what your interests are, you may find that creating another type of content works best for you. But as it relates to me, I find that YouTube can be an extraordinary tool to showcase and prove whether or not you have the skill set that you say you have. It does a wonderful job of providing visual evidence. So YouTube is a site, again, that is owned by Google, and it gives users the opportunity to really become visible because it's the #2 search engine in the world right now. And so with that being said, whenever people want to know how to do something, they use the YouTube video. But in order for your video to surface, in order for your video to be found, you have to make sure that it has the right keywords in the descriptive. That's just one way. And then of course you have to figure out other ways to make that video visible. With that being said, I love YouTube because, again, it can actually allow you to share information so that you become visible to potential employers. With that being said, those are the social networking tools. We just completed another phase. Now what we're going to do is go into the fourth area, which is talking about value. And so I think it's essential that we understand that even though it may be our name on the page, for example, I talked about the Pinterest site and I said Ed Brown. It was pinterest.com/Ed Brown TV Repair. And so in this particular case, Ed Brown's name is on the page, but the page should not be about Ed Brown. The page needs to be about the needs of the potential employer. So when we talk about value, let me define what I mean by that. One of the best ways, I'm going to give you 3, to make sure that you're capable of providing value to a potential employer is for you to make sure that you can do one of 3 things. And it really is in this order, with your knowledge, skills, ability, your professional background, and the experience that you have. How can you help potential employers, number 1, solve a problem? Sometimes you'll find articles where it talks about pain points. So they call problem solving pain points. Because typically if you can find out the pain that a potential employer has, that employer, when they have the pain, they want to get it cured. So it's kind of like having a toothache or a headache. We want to go and find a cure, so we're likely to type information into Google, as an example. It could be Google, Yahoo, or Bing, one of the 3 major search engines. And we say, help me find a cure for headache, or cure for headache. Whatever it is that they type in there, they're looking for specific keywords. And so, again, the pain point is the headache or the toothache. They're out there looking for someone or something to help them solve it. And so hopefully your information is out there so that when an employer needs someone with your skill set, you're the one that comes up. All right, the second thing, if you're not going to create content to provide value that focuses on problem solving, another thing that you could focus on is how to use your skill set and experience to help the employer overcome a particular type of fear. And so in this particular case, typically I'll say something to the job seekers that I work with in terms of saying, if there is a law that comes into effect, which it did, that says that medical offices need to figure out how to create electronic information related to their patients. They need to store the data electronically. If that becomes a law, the question is, can you use your skill set to help that employer actually figure out what types of systems or setups that they need in order to comply with the law? Because their fear is they may not be successful in this. But yet if that's your specialty, the question becomes, how do you position your brand or position your skills so that you're the one that gets seen or noticed by potential employers using social media so that they consider what you have to offer in that particular area? So far we've talked about value in terms of being able to solve problems, and we've talked about value in terms of helping employers to overcome some type of fear that they may have. The third thing that we can focus on as it relates to value is being able to help potential employers achieve a particular goal that they may have in mind. Some people call it an ambition, some people call it an aspiration, but the bottom line is you're trying to help them accomplish something of importance to them, such as a goal. And so again, you go in and you think about, I read these press releases, I see where they're going. What can I do with my knowledge, skills, abilities, and experience in order to help that potential employer get to the point that they desire so that they achieve that goal? And so what you can do, again, is to put content out there online using the social media tools that reflect your brand based on what you want to be professionally known for, so that you can help the employer get to where they desire. That's what I mean by providing value. So in this particular instance, what we're doing is we're showing that you're lending a hand, you're helping employers get to where they need to be. And even though your name is the one that's on that social media page, for example, maybe your name's on the LinkedIn page, maybe your name's on the Pinterest site, it doesn't matter. The page is not about you. It is about what can you do with your knowledge, skills, and abilities to help the employer. And I've already gone over this. I just basically says your focus here is to make sure that you focus on their pain point. Maybe you focus on the problems that they have, or you help them overcome a particular type of fear. And then the latter one is helping them to achieve a particular type of goal. Now, what I've shown here, and this is where I get this from a book, and I don't recall the specific name of it, but I think this is really important. The way that you spend your time is essential on the social media site. And we realize that, I mean, even if I just choose one out of the big 7, so if I even chose LinkedIn, this requires a lot of time. It requires that you have a plan. You don't just sit down and start writing, because it may negatively affect your brand. And so the question becomes, how can I really focus my time so that I get a lot of return on investment? When we talk about return on investment, typically what we're saying is, when an investor considers putting their money into a company, what they evaluate oftentimes is how well management has used the company's resources. And so in your particular case, before you sit down to just put content out online, you're going to figure out what you need to do to get a lot of return on the time that you spend on these social media sites. And so what I've done is I've used a model in one of the books that I've read, and again, unfortunately, I can't recall the specific title of the book so that I can give them due credit. But this is not my model, but it is definitely one that I like. But it basically says that 20% of your articles are going to inform the potential audience so that you can become visible to potential employers by providing value. I said articles, but I mean content when I say that. Content can be articles, it can be videos, and I'll talk a little bit later on about what that can look like. 20% of your time will be spent informing a particular audience so that you can provide value. Another 20% of your time will be spent entertaining an audience, again, so that you can provide value. 40% of your time should be spent interacting or engaging with the audience, meaning that it's not about your voice. You're actually engaging people, getting them involved in the conversation so that they can have their voices heard. You're really providing a place for those conversations to take place, even though, again, your name is on the site, but it's not about you. It's about the value that you're capable of providing. And so in this instance, you're kind of like a coordinator. And then the 20% of the time would actually focus on you selling your information, or maybe you're promoting the content that someone else has created. And so with that being said, sometimes even with the selling portion of it, people use a different model. One of the models out there basically says, you know, for every 6 articles that I write, only one of those will be about me, or only one of those will be about me promoting somebody else's content. So with that, that's a different model. But with this model, I highly recommend that you use return on investment using these particular percentages. So what I'm going to do right now is just break this down so you get an idea of what this looks like. So when we talk about informing, 20% of your time can be spent providing value by telling people, having discussions about certain topics going on in your industry. You're educating them about something that you read. So you're just informing them. And of course, you can actually use videos, you can use discussion topics for that. Another one that's my favorite is being able to use this type of technology, which is a podcast. And so there are many multimedia devices, such as MP3 players, that give you the opportunity to even use apps, even if they're on your mobile devices, such as these tablets or these phones, even on televisions today. So you can inform your audience by using tools that allow you to share podcasts to inform your audience. Even right now, even though I have this presentation going on, for individuals that are able to see this content, yes, they can go online and look at it via video. But for individuals that can't, what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload this to a site. And I'm going to give you an example of that, such as mixcloud.com. And for free, it'll actually upload the audio portion of the video so that if an individual wanted to go jogging or exercising, they can still listen to this content without having access to the video. So again, we can still inform our audience and make them educationally aware of something that we think is important, but it would focus on our industry, our occupation. It could be focused on trends that are going on. We could be looking for best practices. Regardless, we're trying to put the word out and make ourselves valuable to potential employers. Entertainment is another one of those. So in this example, what I've shown here is that even if you're creating these social networking sites using the social networking tools, you can actually narrow your focus to a specific topic, and you can entertain your audience by going to Google, and you have the opportunity there to create content like crossword puzzle generator, or maybe you make hidden word puzzle generator. In this instance, what I did was I created one time, I had an iPad class, and what I did was I put in 20 different terms so that people could become aware of what they could do with their iPads besides just texting, sending emails. And so with that, by the time the students finished their hidden word search, they were now aware of other usages for their iPad. And so I'm saying, depending on your industry and occupation, you can get these sites for free to generate different crossword puzzles or hidden word searches for you, just so you can entertain your audience. One that's really popular is looking at inspirational quotes. And so in this instance, you can entertain them by using a quote from someone. It could be that you use a book tip. Maybe you read a book and you found an excellent piece of advice. You can go and share that on these social media platforms so that you can share valuable, useful information to your audience. That's another form of entertainment. When we talk about interacting and engaging, one of the things that I like to point out is that it's a wonderful thing for us not to always monopolize the conversation. And one way that we can do this is to ask a question to the people who are consuming the content on our social networking sites, whether it's a blog, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on Google+, or even our Facebook page. We need to make sure that we're asking people what they think and let their voices be heard. Another way that I love to use this tool is as it relates to problems that may have arisen in your workplace. Oftentimes people feel that they are the ones that need to find the solution. And we tend to fall short as humans because we don't have all the answers. And what research has shown is that through crowdsourcing, you can take a problem and actually ask it to a group of people, especially like a LinkedIn group that may have 1 million people. And within an hour, you're likely to get back a few hundred responses. And several of those answers may very well solve your problem. And what's fantastic about it is it doesn't just solve it one way. You've gotten several responses back that have solved that same problem in a multitude of ways. And what's so fascinating about it is just the fact that individuals have come up with a myriad of ways in order to address the problem, and that's because we don't all think alike. They come from diverse backgrounds, and they don't have to have a lot of knowledge and education. And what's so mind-boggling about this is oftentimes employers may spend time paying for an outside consultant to come in to solve the problem. The problem doesn't even get solved, and they could have tried to solve it for like 15 to 20 years. But yet, with just a few minutes of your time, you presented the question to the group, you got them involved in the conversation, and you've come up with several different ways to solve it. And you may just choose even a hybrid format. Maybe you pull a little bit from the different solutions that you see, just to basically say, you know, in our organization, this is how we prefer to implement the solutions that we see, because every place is not the same. But my point is, throwing the question out to the group and allowing the group to give you the information back. And again, that's referred to as crowdsourcing. Another thing that I like to talk about is emerging trends. So another way to get the conversation going, and in order to demonstrate expertise, knowledge, and skills, is for you to be aware of what's going on as it relates to your occupation and your industry. And so one of the things that you can do is to talk about emerging trends. So in your geographical area, it could be that you see, based on some of the articles you've read or some of the conferences that you've attended, you could pose a question to the group by saying, you know, I was reading an article today that basically said, and I'm going to use education, that distance learning is the future of education. What is your college doing in order to offer or facilitate or segue into distance education into the future? Now, I'm just throwing something out there for right now. I want you to make sure that you always put the question into your own words. And of course, you're going to always think about it before you put the question out there in the group. And it's going to be fascinating to see what people say. But yet, starting those conversations about emerging trends gives you an idea of how you could position your brand before the competition becomes too fierce, so that you can take some of that knowledge back, share it with your organization, and actually lead the way for organizational change that's geared towards the future. That is invaluable. Another thing that we want to focus on here is selling. And so we say that basically selling is 20% of your time. And so one of the things that you can certainly do is to take the focus off of yourself, and you can actually sell someone else. And so when I talk about selling, I mean the word promote, to advertise someone else. And so if there was a particular book that you read and you liked, then basically go out there and share that content online. Make sure that when you do, it's actually related to your occupation or your industry. Having said that, you're also paying it forward. Maybe you decide that you want to work in a particular company. Maybe there was someone at Cisco who wrote a book, and maybe it was the human resources manager, and maybe you loved it. Be genuine and share that information with the people that you know. It could be that that person is monitoring whenever they're being mentioned, and you somehow get on their radar. Maybe you create a tweet that says, you know, I read a book that was written by the human resources manager of Cisco, and you tell what their name is. And so with that, tell and share information about why you think that this was a good book. So always add value to the conversation. Don't just write that they wrote a book. Add value to it. Share some of your perspective. Allow your voice to be heard and add some type of significance to the conversation. And the latter one is focused on you selling yourself. Maybe it could be that you have thought about your knowledge, skills, and ability in the workplace. You're familiar with the emerging trends. You want to become known and have your voice heard, and so you decide to publish a book, an ebook. It could be that you publish a course. Whatever it is, you're able to sell your information on these social media sites. But again, you would either follow the first model that basically says 20% of your time is spent selling your information, and when I say sell, I mean promoting your content that you created, whether free or whether there's a premium for it. Or it could be that you're doing the same for someone else's content, only 20% of the time. You can still use the model that basically says for every 6 articles that I write talking about other people or other value that's being presented, I'm only going to talk about myself and what I've done one time. And so now we actually start drawing to a close, because now the focus is going to be on increasing our online visibility. So when you know yourself in terms of what you want to be professionally known for, when it's clear that you know how you want potential employers to think and feel about you, when you've gone in and defined your brand, then you have the opportunity to actually start considering the different social networking tools that are available to make your voice heard, more specifically LinkedIn. Then we also have the opportunity to be able to add value for potential employers so that they understand how what we have can benefit their organization. We now get to the 5th part of the process, which says this is how I can make myself visible to the potential employers that I really want to work with. So we have to get found. And one of the best ways that we can go out there and make ourselves visible is to be found by creating content online and making sure that every time we create content, We use keywords related to our occupation or our industry. Some of the ways that we're able to get found is by using these 5 basic media types. And really, when you look at this, the 5th one, which is hyperlinks, is a gimme. There's no way for you to share any content online unless you use hyperlinks. So that's mandatory. So what I'm saying here is, in order for you to get found, you have to be able to share some form of text. You can share images, you can share audio files, as well as videos. There can be a hybrid where you share a combination of those. And so I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. Here what we're saying is, in order for you to get found, you have to be willing to create text. In this example, I focus primarily on blogging because you can use tools like Blogger or blogs in order for you to create articles that help to solve problems for potential employers, or where you talk about content that's important to your particular occupation. In this example, what I've done is I've said, in this image, it's showing shoes. You'll notice that there are 7 of those. I find that there are people that say, I really don't like to write. So if they don't like to write, what I'm saying is that they can quickly use text that includes keywords so that they become visible online, but they can actually use this to say 5 ways to overcome boredom at work. And then you just use 1 or 2 words to represent the 5 ways that they're able to do that. So text doesn't have to include a long article. We can be creative about it, but the question is how. So make sure your text includes keywords and then just have visual images to represent that information. In this section, what I've done is I've talked about images. Another way for you to be visible online is to share content such as this. This is referred to as an infographic. You can use PowerPoint, Word, Publisher, a variety of tools in order for you to create like a tip sheet that shows someone in your particular occupation or industry how you can focus on a particular topic to help them overcome a problem or overcome a fear or maybe even accomplish a goal. And so in this one, it's actually showing the 5 ways to make your LinkedIn profile irresistible. Another way for us to be able to share images is to think about using PowerPoint, because a PowerPoint presentation, very much like the one that I'm having here that I'm sharing with you, gives you the opportunity to go out and add in your images, and it also allows you to share text. But the primary focus here is images. So if you're familiar with PowerPoint, you want to get your message out there, use this particular tool in order to make yourself visible. I've already talked about podcasts. And so with podcasts, we have the opportunity to actually become like our own talk show host. We can actually put information out there that is similar to having our own talk show. So I did the talk show. So with audio podcasts, we have the opportunity to be able to focus on either a talk show host, we could be a talk show host, or we can have the opportunity to actually create a podcast that's focused on MP3 files that make us seem more like a DJ. But when we're talking about our career path, it's very helpful for us to be able to create content as long or as short as we want, where we become known or demonstrate some level of subject matter expertise so that people can realize the depth of our knowledge and then give us the opportunity to come in and work for their organization or even interview as a potential candidate because you have a specific skill set. So again, one of the tools that I used in this instance was Mixcloud, and the example that I would give here, and I created one for the students that I had in my class, it was mixcloud.com/Letitia Alford. I uploaded one particular presentation and I extracted the audio file from it, and it was the audio content that I placed on that site for that one. It was more of a what I did was I extracted the information, so I uploaded that one piece of content, removed the audio from it, and uploaded that content onto the Mixcloud site. And that gave me the opportunity to repurpose the content without spending a whole lot of time on that information. And so that's one of the things that I like, is that with the podcast, again, we can have a lot of visibility, sharing information online, but yet we have to take it upon ourselves to decide, how do we want to become visible? How can I spend a little bit of time actually showing off who I am and showcasing the knowledge that I can use in the workplace for the employer. Video, as I've said before, YouTube actually gives you the opportunity to upload video tutorials, how-tos. It can actually demonstrate you using a skill set, or it could be you just having a couple of talking points or even certain presentations to showcase your knowledge, skills, abilities, as well as your experience. So YouTube can be done at no charge in order for you to demonstrate your skill set. There's some other tools out there, but I just think it's a lot easier to get started with the YouTube site, and then you can actually have your own customized URL. So in this instance, if I wanted to have youtube.com/LetitiaAlfordXL, if that was my focus and that site was available, that would be an example of how I would want to be professionally known. As I said with hyperlinks, these are a gimme because in order for you to share any of the text articles, audio files, videos, as well as images, you need to make sure that you upload that content to a hosting site, provide a unique hyperlink that people can click so they can access your content. If it's someone else's content that you're sharing online, quite naturally just grab the URL or the web address from that person's site, put that in your content in order for people to click on the link, and you make sure you give that person credit. But please make sure that if you decide to share a hyperlink, add your own voice. Let your audience know why what you're saying is important so that you're not doing something like a me too. You're adding value to the conversation. One of the things that I normally like to discuss with the job seekers that I work with is how they can get content, because a lot of people say, how can I stay informed? And one of the places that they can certainly go to in order to get updates, and I'm not saying that it's exhaustive, but it certainly has quite a bit of information, is Google News. So you could go to google.com, type in Google News. If you use Yahoo or Bing, you can do the same thing in order for you to find content related to whatever topic you want to discuss. And so that's one of the places you can look is Google News. A second tool that I like to use actually deals with LinkedIn. So if you're on the LinkedIn site, if you look at the top where you have the navigation area, underneath it there's a little menu, and you can click on interests and you can select Pulse. That used to be called LinkedIn Today, but Pulse allows you the opportunity to actually follow thought leaders, such as it could be Barack Obama, it could be Jack Welch. I will actually say that these thought leaders have created some fantastic articles with wonderful tips in order to have conversations in your particular group, or depending on what your industry or occupation is, you may find your own thought leaders. And so what you can do is just go out there and let people know your thoughts about that content, as well as network and meet with others who can actually make you more visible in your area and to help you position your brand. So you can actually listen to the thought leaders. You can subscribe to content from different types of industries. Maybe you're interested in technology or healthcare or financial, whatever area you're interested in. I advise you to go out and look in LinkedIn Pulse and sign up for some of those different industries, as well as the other publishers like the Wall Street Journal, New York Times. They have content out there that you're able to look at and decide what talking points do you want to have, what kind of discussions do you want to start in order to make yourself visible and add value to potential employers. In this particular instance, another place for you to get information about the industry and occupational trends is for you to look at the LinkedIn company pages. And so with this, you can quickly do a search on the LinkedIn site, type in the name of the company that you're looking for, go to their page, see what they're talking about, and then use that in order to get conversations started. And so this is another tool that you're able to use in order to generate conversation or to expand upon other types of conversations. So as a review, let me go back and do a quick review of everything that we've talked about so far. It's essential that you know who you are professionally so that before you get started with social media, you have a clear idea of what it is that you want to be professionally known for. Because if you don't have a clue, it's impossible for you to begin an organized conversation in order for you to do the second part of the process, which is determining your brand. In order for you to determine your brand, you need to know what it is that you want to be professionally known for. And once you've determined that, at that point you can go in and say, okay, this is what I want people to think and feel about me professionally, so that even though you've never met the potential employer, they have an idea of what your personality is like. They know what you are likely to do in their environment. And it doesn't mean that it's 100% proven, but it gives them a sample of who you are, and it helps them to know whether or not you are truly who you say you are. So you're giving them a taste. It's like a try before you buy. And then we get into the third part of this, which are the social networking tools. And so with this, I've already talked about the big 8. I outlined what they were, and I then gave a general idea of how you might use them as a potential job seeker. The fourth thing is, even though we have a site that has our name on it, which actually shows what we're professionally interested in, it actually demonstrates our brand. It's essential that we go in and demonstrate the value, the benefit that we're able to provide potential employers based on their needs, based on what they want from us. And whatever we're talking about, it really needs to be relevant to that particular employer. And once we've determined all of that, last but not least, we have to go out and make ourselves visible. Because if we have all the skill set in the world, and if we have this experience, and we know that we have knowledge that can benefit others, but they don't know who we are, then it is useless. There's no reason for that particular employer to even consider us, because they don't even know who we are. So you need to make sure that you make yourself visible and you put yourself out there in the world so that you can develop your online reputation, so that if a potential employer searches for you publicly, they have something of value to look at. And you're determining and shaping the way that you're seen, and you're not allowing others to determine that for you. Thank you for listening to this presentation.